As you know that I like to put heart and soul into all my jobs, well, today we've got a Kia Soul. That's different, isn't it? Friend of mine's car. I don't mind doing little car jobs like this, you know, if it's just a brake job that we've got to do. But I thought it might be interesting to see how things work when you're not familiar with them. Like, I've never seen one. In fact, I've never even driven one. The customer drove it into the shop and plonked it here, and that's it. Now, it's a nice little job to do today because, again, it's -20 outside, but it's a toasty +20 inside, so we're not going to go very far. So, I've taken the wheel off, which is kind of straightforward. But what I want to show you is like some techniques and bits and pieces that you might find on your own car, not just your Land Rover. Now, the thing is, the technique is very much the same on most cars. You've got hydraulics operating pistons or cylinders that expand, push pistons and friction material to a drum or a disc. Now, I've got the wheel off, let's go and have a look and see what we're up against. As we can see here, this is a disc brake system, very much similar to we have on the Defenders and the Discos and the Range Rovers. The only difference is with this, the handbrake mechanism is worked by some expanding shoes on the inside of the drum. I think the LR3 onwards had this idea where they had the electronic parking brake. The problem with that is that when you're going to take off these discs or rotors or whatever you want to call them, sometimes a handbrake can be seized on. Now, the thing is, in Canada for some reason nobody ever seems to use a handbrake. They always usually put them in gear or leave them in park. So we've got a good chance that it's not being used. The other thing is, if it has been used, or if it hasn't been used, it could be seized up. But this is going to give us a good indication that the wheel is turning freely, so the shoes are not making contact with the drum, so it's going to be easy peasy to get out. Now, I know this is a Kia, but it's the same principle on most rear disc vehicles. You've got a sliding caliper here, so what we've got to take, and some little brake shoes, brake pads in here. Same principle, exactly the same. So what we've got to do, there's two nuts on the back here, we've got to take those off, two bolts, we've got to take those off to get the caliper off, get rid of the shoes, or the pads, and then take off the support bracket for the brake. And then that will give us access to get to these cross-headed bolts here, take the drum off, inspect the parts and see what we need. Now, I can see straight away from this, that, let me move into the light a bit, out of the light, that the rotors or the discs are very bad. They're not shiny at all. That means one of two things. They've been prone to seizing at some time, and or they've just been stood for a long time and rusted up, who knows. But you can't put new pads on rotors like that or discs like that. It'll just chew them up and it won't bed in properly and it won't be right. So let's get this caliper off and let's see, and I'll explain how all these bits and pieces work. So I've got the caliper off, and I used a 14mm key, a single hexagon key like this. Always use these, don't use the double hexagon, because when you've got rusted nuts and bolts like this, for example, you really want a good snug fitting spanner. Honestly, don't use a socket, a single socket, and you'll find life's a lot easier. Now, I took them off with a quarter drive because they shouldn't be that tight. They're not really rusted. They've had a little bit of copper grease on them before, but not enough. Now, what have we found out so far? Now, as you know, the reason why I do these videos is not just to show you, but it's also to show the customer what I'm up against. I haven't got a boss breathing down my neck to do this in like 20 minutes. So, I want to show the customer and you what I have to do to earn a crust. Now, I haven't taken these pads out yet, but they're looking pretty seized up. There you go, there's one. But the back one, oh dear. I don't know if I'm going to get it out. I'm going to have to get a hammer, just hang on. Handyman's secret weapon. Little tap. Oh, oh dear. I think the newness has worn off. He's certainly got good life out of those, nothing to complain about. If anybody's ever wondering what that little tang does here, well, that's supposed to rub on the disc, but it seems to be the wrong way around. It usually rubs on things and makes a squeaking type of noise. It isn't really a spring as such. Now, what have we got? First things first, what we're going to check is these sliding pins here. This one's nice, and that one's nice. One of the main causes of brakes seizing up is these pins, because of the hydraulic pressure, they move in when they're all rusted up, but they can't move back out again. They can't free the caliper back off. So the brakes stick and they eventually bind, and we get problems like this. It's not good. But these are free, so what's caused that brake to behave like that? Well, I don't know if we can see this. I don't know if we can see this at all. I'll see if I can get out of the light a bit. I'm in the shadow here. The piston in this caliper. No, wait a minute. There, you perhaps. I'll let me get me light. Just so. There, how's that? The piston in there is seized up solid. I hope you can see that. So, we're going to add that to our shopping list. We'll get an exchange caliper, and believe me, it's worth it just to get an exchange stuff, because I'm not going to row on for a day and a half, or for both sides, getting pistons out and getting bleed screws out, because they'll be stuck. Send them away. They're not all that expensive from your local parts shop, because that's all they do all day. They put them in a box and get them reconditioned, so I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to leave the hydraulic system complete. I'm not going to touch that yet. The main thing I've got to get off next is these bolts at the back that holds this support bracket on. Taking off the back bolts is quite easy. Again, this time I'm using a 1/2 inch drive with a single hex 14mm socket on. Again, we don't want to break or round off the bolts, because I'll explain to you in a minute what happens, because I've had people think, oh well, the bolt's tight, so I'll just cut the head off. Well, you can't, because you can't slide the caliper back to get the bolt off. You've got to get that bolt out by fair means or foul. Now sometimes if they are rounded off, a good technique to do is to polish it all up the best you can and just weld a big nut over the top, and then you'll get some more leverage and you'll get it out. Fortunately, because this is a fairly recent car, we don't have to bother with that. And you see there's a caliper bracket moving. I'm going to pop the bracket in my sandblaster, my little cabinet. I'm going to give it a quick clean up. There we go, come on. Yeah, there you go, you see. That's what I was trying to explain. These here. Now, again, I was trying to mention with these bolts here, those go into the back. Now, if you cut that head off, how the heck are you going to get that out? You can't. So weld the nut on and then it'll work fine. So the next job, we've got to get these bolts out of here. We don't know how tight they are, so let's just try it with a big screwdriver first. There we go. I've got the right size screwdriver. Oh, that is tight. That is monster tight. So let's revert to the old trick. See if we can get them out. Just bang them a bit. Again, again, we're not using any special tools so far. More force. So we're going to get the screws out of here, and I just tried tapping them a little bit with a hammer, and I noticed that they're actually recessed a little bit so they won't come out. Ideally we would use an impact like this, but I haven't got the correct bit for the end of here. It got broken. So what we're going to do is actually put the screwdriver in and give it a good belt. You can see, what we'll do is we'll shock the thread, and with a bit of luck, oh, there you go, it come out. So let's get all the rest of it out, see what it looks like. So once we've got the screws out, there is a little rubber grommet that goes on this little plug down here, and you're supposed to back off the adjuster for the handbrake. However, I think, oh, there you go, it should work like that. Now, this is the first time I've took it off, and Jim will tell me because Jim stood over there. You can see how bad the inside of this drum is. So that's going to be scrapped. The shoes, well, dear me. Let's see if we can get this light over here. The shoes are actually non-existent. There's no shoes on there at all. So we've got to get a full kit to replace those. A new caliper, new pads, new rotor, and everything should be fine. Yeah, quite a bit of work to do. But for a 2013, it's been quite rusty. So I'm going to go upstairs now to the parts department shop and ring the parts department and get some parts sent over, because no doubt the other side will be exactly the same. So the parts have just arrived, so we better get on with this. As you know, the shoes here are absolutely finished. But what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to tap around everything, get any remaining rust and rubbish. You see how it all comes off? These mudguard, or these stone shields, or whatever you want to call them, they're already rusted through. What is it now? Is it only, what is it now, 2018? Hey, it's not all that old, is it? Thought Land Rovers were rusty, eh? The idea of getting all the rusty bits off is so that when you've got all your new shoes and all your new bits and pieces in, you don't want bits falling in, rusty bits, and then jamming anything up, so it's best to get it all cleaned up straight away. In an ideal world, we'd put new ones on, but I've just realised that all the parts are over $400, so it's kind of expensive. Now, were this my own car, then I'd rebuild the calipers myself probably, because I've got time. Whereas you know out there, time's money, and it's easier for me to put a rebuilt caliper on here instead of me spending an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, rebuilding those calipers. You know, sometimes it's economy. Although you can see how thin these are. You can do things on the cheap. You can do things on the cheap, but sometimes it's false economy. So I'm going to now try and get these off. Now I'm happy that's cleaned up a bit. Get this cleaned off and see how these come apart. It could be interesting. Looks like I've got to take this little clip off here, to push it in and twist it. Again, just like a Land Rover handbrake drum, nothing different there. It's just that I hope everything here all comes off right. The only bit I didn't get in the kit was the spring kit for here, but I think these will live again, hopefully. But I think it was like $80 they wanted for a spring kit. It was kind of expensive. So I'm trying to keep costs down, but I think those springs will live again. If it was summertime, I'd get a sandblaster out and blast it all off, but I'm not sandblasting in my shop. We'll have dust everywhere. Anyway, let's get these springs off. The regular tool you use to get those springs off here is this little thing here. It's got a little taper inside it, and it's got a little access hole here so you can see what you're doing. This is actually a proper girling tool. I've had it for donkey's years. But you push it in, twist it, and then you pull it out. Great idea, except it won't fit in here. The hub gets in the way. So we're going to put that to one side. And what we're going to use is a pair of these needle nose locking pliers. Now these are like mole grips or vice grips. They're very, very good. The adjustment on them is quite easy. I've had these a long time too, but I was a bit reluctant to buy them. They're by Craftsman, but they're absolutely excellent because you can open them and close them. You know, normally with a pair of vice grips or mole grips you have a second lever, you know, that gets trapped in your skin and all over the place. Well, this hasn't. It just goes over centre. Works really nice. So let's see if we can get those out. We adjust it up so it's just got a nip, and somehow I've got to get my finger around the back of here. Oh, jeez. There we go. No, it's on the floor. Better pick that up. I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll do the other side so I'm not boring you senseless. Push that through. Oh, dear. Oh, I don't think I'm going to get it out. Wait a minute. And if I get it out, I don't know if I'm going to get it back in again. So, there's a little disc like that, very thin. I'm tempted actually just to say I'll order them, because looking at that, I think this comes with the retaining kit. Do you know something? I'm not going to, if it's 50 odd, 60 odd, 80 odd dollars for a kit, I don't want to put this back on and have it's so corroded that it's going to spring out. So I'm going to strip all this brake down, and I think I'll fit the hardware kit as well. It's not in stock, it's a special order, it'll be in tomorrow, but it doesn't really matter because it's Friday tomorrow, the end of the week, and this, I've got no jobs to come in this week, so we'll do it. Look at that. Can you see that? It's wafer thin. You just don't risk on stuff, because if that comes off and gets dragged into all your new kit inside here, your new shoes, it's going to bind and it's going to make all sorts of noise, and we don't want to come back and do this repair again, you know, because if it buggers these shoes up, it's on my dime, and you know, for a few simple things like that, the cost can add up. It's all about saving money, it's not about bloody wasting money. So with those out of the way, we'll push those pins through, and hopefully we can get hold underneath. Oh, there's the adjuster, look. Man, oh man, this is absolutely rotten. The problem with brakes is you can't put oil in them. There's the adjuster. Now, this is the reason why we didn't put this is the reason why I didn't bother with the adjustment, backing off the adjustment, because there's the adjuster there, and what you're supposed to do is move this around. Of course, these two pieces are fixed, and there's a thread in here that is absolutely seized rotten. So I'm going to put that in the blaster, clean that up, and then warm it up and free it off. And I think we might just go to the bench and show you how you do that. So there's the shoes off sort of thing. There's a spring at the bottom. Man, no wonder they build these cars small. These little Koreans with the little small fingers, they can put these together all right, but we have a sort of a bit of a struggle. I've got to get that spring off there. There we go. Get the spring off, can I get it back on again? I think they build these up before they put the hub bearing in. And I don't want to take that off. That looks a big job. So, with that off, we'll take this off. Take this spring off here. Oh, dear me. There we go. Oh yes, it's definitely got to get a spring kit in. The springs are extremely thin and worn. You know, they haven't really got a lot of life in. They're not too bad. But again, mark my words, if you're doing something like this and it's going to be a hold until tomorrow, just do one side, because you can always go and check the other if you've forgotten how to do it. A lot of the times when you're doing brake jobs and things like this and you haven't got a workshop manual, it's the best way to do it. Have a look at the other side before you start messing about, because you can waste a lot of time. And also, which way do these things go around? We don't know. So all we have to do at the other side, if we're not familiar, is take the drum off, walk round, that's it, and just put it on this side and it'll work. Now I was sort of mentioning, this is important, this little tang here. I realise it is rusted off and snapped off, and I'm going to show you what it actually does, because the parts are here. Let me go and get a box. So, this little tang, it was a bit of a mystery before, because it's supposed to look like this. Alright, so let's put them side by side. You can see that the owners had absolutely fantastic mileage out of these pads, because obviously this is down to the bare metal. But what does this thing do? Well, what it's supposed to do is touch the disc or the rotor before the pad gets to this condition. Now, what it will do is it will make a singing, chirping noise on the disc, and it won't damage the disc as such, because it's just moving on the rotor itself, before the pad material gets to a state like this. But this one has rusted off completely and snapped, and therefore not making a noise. Customer doesn't know, and he keeps on driving and driving. If you notice inside, well, let's throw that away, we don't need that. If you noticed in these pads, they've got a groove in them. The groove isn't for noise or anything like that, it is actually a wear indicator. Note, the height of the tang here is approximately at the bottom of the groove. So it's going to give you some indication that, hey, these pads are now worn out, it's time to replace them. So that's what basically what they do. So now we've got this off, there are bits absolutely everywhere, bit here, another spring, and yet another spring. Let's have a look and compare what an old shoe would look like to a new one. Quite the difference, as you can see. The shoe linings aren't very thick at all. Well, that's principally because all they're doing is acting as a handbrake only. They don't do actually any braking to assist the stopping when you put your pedal down. This is only for the handbrake, and that's why they're so thin. So where's the lining gone? Surely they haven't worn out that much. And what's happened is these have obviously had a lot of moisture in, and these are bonded to the steel. And what happens is anything that's bonded doesn't like humidity, doesn't like water. So what happens is these linings will actually drop off into the bottom of the brake drum here. And because these are all rusty, oh, I've got too much stuff going on. Because everything's sort of rusty, the lining will drop off into the bottom and just get ground away into dust. It will also add a lot of resistance for your rolling resistance of your wheel as well, sometimes causing brakes to get hot. So, I've got that off now. All I've got to do now is take off this piece here to get the spring off completely, and we do that by using our friendly grips again, and pull that spring back, put your grippers on, whatever you want to call them, nip it up a bit, not too much, just a little bit at a time. move that spring right back, grip it up, and take the shoe off. The new linings come with a pivot arm, so we don't have to worry with that. And that's it. So what I've got to do now is clean all this lot up the best I can. Again, in an ideal world, sandblaster, but the sandblaster's in the container, so I'm just going to chip away with it with a pick for a welder. You'll see, I'll come back in a minute. This is just what we're going to do to get the rust off. We're just going to tap it around, and you can see, you're supposed to wear glasses, but you can see the rust breaking off. There it goes. It ain't going to be perfect. You know, you maybe can get a drill with a wire brush in there and clean it up, and that's what I'm going to do. These welding hammers are dirt cheap. You can pick them up at car, you know, when you go to a car show or something like that. And you need one. This is to take the slag off welds. And the reason why it's got a handle like that is when you're hammering metal, it takes the shock out, so you're not stressing your wrist and stuff like that. You're not getting shock right up your arm. So, clean up time and build it up. But now I know what I need. This job is on hold. So I'll put this part of the video up today, and then when we get all the parts tomorrow afternoon, we'll build it back up again. Alright, so I hope this is going to make this Kia better. I know I've replaced an awful lot of parts, but as you can see, I have to. Alright, so we'll talk to you later. Bye.